Welcome back to my English Learning YouTube channel. So in my videos I am discussing English grammar and the topic is degrees of comparison. Here I have written degrees of comparison. So it is a very important chapter of English grammar. So we have already learned two rules of degrees of comparison where we can mention here that he is richer than I. So this is a sentence which is in comparative degree. So we can change it into positive only, but not to superlative, because the comparison here is limited between these two subjects, he and I. So it is CD, that comparative degree. Again, we can change it into positive. So look at the board, where we have to exchange the subject. Okay. Now in place of he, we should write I, and I always takes am with it in present tense, and as it is not in negative, that is why we have to use not here. So I am not as rich as he. Okay, this is a sentence of positive degree. Okay, now we have also already learned another rule of degrees of comparison, where we can change degrees in all the three forms. Okay, so the example is Raju is the best boy. Raju is the best boy in our class. In our class. So this is a sentence of superlative degree where best has been used, and before best we have used the article, definite article the, because it is the rule. Then we always use the article before the superlative degree. So this sentence can be changed in three forms of degrees of comparison. Here it is already in superlative degree. Now we can change it into comparative one, and for changing into comparative one, we have to start a sentence with the same subject. Okay, so this is the revision of the previous video. Okay, Raju is better. It will be better, and then any other. This is, I can say that this is the memorized part of comparative degree, where it will come automatically if we want to make or change into comparative degree. This is the most important characteristic of comparative degree. So Raju is better than any other boy in our class. Okay, boy in our class. This is in comparative degree. Okay. Now if we change it into positive degree, then we have to start the sentence with no other. That means here in place of any we will write no, and other boy in our class will remain the same. Okay, so it will be, and subject will go to the end of the sentence, at the last of the sentence. Okay, so here no other boy in the class, in our class is as good as Raju. So good is the positive degree of best. Okay, as Raju. So it will be positive degree of this sentence. Raju is the best boy in our class. Raju is better than any other boy in our class. No other boy in our class is as good as Raju. Okay, this we have already learned about these rules in our previous videos. Okay, now I am going to discuss a new rule, another rule, not new but another rule of degrees of comparison. And somehow most of the students are seen that they commit mistake in the change of these degrees of comparison regarding this rule, which I am going to tell you now. Okay, now I am writing a sentence on the board. It will be like this. So Einstein was one of the greatest scientists of the world. Okay, or Newton was one of the greatest scientists of the world. So here the sentence is Newton was one of the one of the greatest scientists in the world. So here we have to notice the difference between the former superlative degree and the present superlative degree sentence. Definitely this sentence is in superlative degree because we have used here the superlative degree of great, that is greatest. But the difference is here. The difference is here. So please note the difference. In our former sentences, we used to write Newton was the greatest scientist in the world. But here we have not written that sentence. But we are mentioning Newton as greatest, but not the greatest, but one of the greatest. That means there are some other greatest scientists in the world like Newton. That is why we are not telling that Newton is the greatest or was the greatest. That is why the pattern itself tells that the change of degree of this sentence will not be like that of the previous one. It will be something other in the comparative and positive degree. So I hope you are getting the point. Don't think that it is very difficult, but just remember or just notice these two words, and for these two words the pattern of the sentence will be different. Okay. Now if we want to change it into comparative degree, we have to start with the same subject, Newton. Okay. So as Newton was one of the greatest scientists in the world, in comparative degree it will be that Newton was greater than any other. No. In previous sentences we wrote any other scientist, but here we must not write any other scientist because he is one of the greatest, not the greatest. That is why we have to write Newton was greater than most of the scientists in the world. Okay, here it will be Newton was greater than most of the scientists in the world. There are so many scientists in the world, and there are so many great scientists in the world also. So, but Newton's position is that he is greater than most of the scientists. Most of the scientists are not as great as Newton. That is why in positive we have to write or start this sentence with very few, almost negative. That means very few scientists in the world were as great as Newton. That means very few scientists in the world were as great as Newton. That means Newton was greater than most of the scientists in the world. Then Newton was one of the greatest scientists in the world. So pattern of the sentence must be different from the previous one. So remember, and just try to understand what is going on in these sentences. Okay, just try to understand what is going on in these sentences. So if some sentences or any sentence of this kind is asked in the examination, so be careful which rule would apply here. So we have to write now not no other in positive, but we have to start with very few scientists in the world where, as it is in the past tense and here the subject is very few scientists, plural form. That is why we have to use where, plural be verb of past tense, that is where very few scientists in the world were as great as Newton. I hope the idea is or conception is very clear here. This is the positive degree of these two sentences. Okay. Now I am giving some more examples for our practice that will completely clear our confusion or doubt regarding the change of degrees of comparison of this rule. Okay, I am speaking or telling you in a very lucid and simple manner and very slow motion that that can that will help you to understand all the sentences better. Okay, now I am writing the USA is one of the richest countries in the world. This one I write as three sentences. The USA is one of the richest countries, not country, one of the richest countries. That means there are so many rich countries in the world, but one of them is USA. That is why we have to use the plural form of countries. But in previous role, we did not use the plural form of this noun. Okay, we all only wrote the singular form. So this is also a difference. This is also a difference, and we have to notice it. So the USA is one of the richest countries in the world. Okay, this is in superlative degree, and we have to change this into comparative and positive degree. So now I am writing the second sentence. Okay, so we can write Monos or Monjo. Okay, I have written here Monjo. Monjo is more beautiful, more beautiful, more beautiful than most of the girls in the group. So this is another sentence which has been written in comparative degree, where we may read Manju is more beautiful than most of the girls in the group. Okay, now I am writing the third one, which will definitely be of positive degree, and the positive degree must be started with very few. Yeah, okay, very few animals. I am writing here very few animals in the world are as faithful as the dog. So you see, this is a very important sentence which is commonly acknowledged by everyone, that dog is one of the most faithful animals of the world. Okay, this is in positive degree. So you see, I have written here three sentences of 3 degrees. Okay, superlative, comparative, and positive. And now we'll change all these 3 sentences with 2 more sentences each. Okay, with 2 more sentences each, where we'll get all the 3 forms of the sentences. Already one form is given and 2 other forms will be practiced here. So if we want to change it into comparative one, then we have to start the sentence with the very subject that has already been written here, the USA. Okay, it will be the USA is richer than most of the countries. It will be the USA is richer than most of the countries in the world. Okay, very simple. The USA is richer than most of the countries in the world. So very easy to understand, but just you must be a little bit careful. So this will be comparative degree. Again, if we want to write it in positive degree, then we have to start the sentence with very few. Okay, very few. So very few countries it will be very few countries in the world are as rich as the USA. Okay, this is positive degree of these two sentences or of these two degrees, that means superlative and comparative. Now I am coming to the second sentence where Manju is more beautiful than most of the girls in the group. That means there are some other beautiful girls in the class or in the group. Manju is not the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful. So we can write it in superlative degree, and in superlative degree we have to start with the same subject, Manju. So that is why we have to write here is more than most of the girls, not than any other girl. That is why we have to write that Manju is one of the most beautiful girls in the group. Manju is one of the most beautiful girls. Okay, always remember here we must use the plural form of the noun, not the singular one like than any other. Okay, so Manju is one of the most beautiful girls in the group. Okay, in the group, this will be superlative degree. Now we have to change it in positive, and in positive such type of sentences are always written with very few. Okay, very few girls in the group are, here the noun is in plural form, that is why we have to write the plural form of the verb. Very few girls in the group are as beautiful as Manju. Okay, as beautiful as Manju. This is positive degree of these two sentences. Again, the last one, number 3. Here the sentence is written in positive degree because it has been started with very few. That is why we have to change it into comparative and superlative. So in comparative we have to write or start the sentence with the subject. And what is the subject? In positive degree, the subject is always written at the end of the sentence. To the last part of the sentence, it becomes the last part of the sentence. About whom something is spoken in the sentence, that becomes the subject. That is why in comparative it will come to the very first, and in superlative it will also come to the very first. Okay, now we will start this sentence with the dog. Okay, the dog is more faithful. So faithful in its comparative degree, it will be more faithful. The dog is more faithful. The dog is more faithful than most of the animals in the world. Okay, in the world. So very simple. So it will be CD. That means it will be comparative degree. Again, we will change it into superlative degree, where we have to start with the same subject, the dog. The dog is one of the, here we have to use one of the dog is one of the most faithful animals, not animal, but it will be animals. That means among all animals. That is why we have to write the plural form of animals here. The dog is one of the most faithful animals in the world. Okay, it will be the superlative. So I hope everything is clear here, and your conception will also be clear, and it will be crystal clear if you examine these sentences and try to understand all these sentences. So I will not discuss some more sentences today. I want to stop here today, and I hope you will enjoy learning English grammar through my English learning channel, and all of you are once again thanked for watching my videos.